kind of time be given to a subject such as this? But also, it's the only organization that needs to rely on voluntary community support to make it possible. Why? Because if we were offering commercials on WVIZ PBS, this station would have the same kind of programs that every other station had to make commercial advertisers happy. But our sponsor is you. It's the viewer, and we're beholding to you and to only you, but ask you to join in the partnership. So get to your telephone right now. Remember the wonderful premiums. For your $60 pledge, we will send you the Gardener's Guide to Northeastern Ohio, this fabulous new loose-leaf book that is filled with questions and answers of over 20 years of materials from the Cleveland Botanical Garden. There's also a whole list in there, Maureen, of what you do all throughout the year. What are the appropriate things to be doing each month here in Northeastern Ohio as far as how your garden grows. You'll also receive in the back a wonderful group of articles. That's at the $60 level. Now at the $90 level, we have a choice of two thank you gifts. One, and I think many people like to have this, is the home video today of all of the gardening segments. This is going to be fabulous. No one has ever assembled a tape like this geared exclusively to Northeastern Ohio ever before, and you can have the entire program. After this program is done today, they'll be editing all those segments together, and it will come your way at the $90 level, or, and we'll be talking about this book more as we move along also, the Cleveland Garden Handbook by Susan McClure. To tell you how special this was highly recommended, a must-have for all green thumbs, area green thumbs, said the Cleveland Botanical Garden, and the Plain Dealer said it's must-reading for every plant lover who lives in our area. So this will come your way at $90, but what the heck, Maureen, why not go right to that $180 pledge level, and then we'll send you the complete package of the Gardener's Guide to Northeastern Ohio. All three items will come to you as our way of saying thank you so much for that $180 gift. That's a wonderful one to have, and I got a hunch, Maureen, a lot of people are going to be taking advantage of that today.
I think so, and it's time to do it right now while we go back to Julie, who has some experts with a lot more tips.
And I don't know if you can see us now through all of this foliage, but we're going to talk now, obviously, about houseplants. Houseplants are a great way to bring the outdoors indoors.
It definitely is, and joining us from the Botanical Garden is Cynthia Mazer.
Hi there.
Hey, Cynthia, I see a lovely ficus tree over here.
Yeah, we brought several houseplants here today to show everybody what some of the more common houseplants are. And what I have here is a variegated ficus tree. And the reason why it's called variegated is, do you see the outer edges of the leaves here, how they're lighter in color?
Two-tone.
Such as that. Yeah, many ficus trees come in lots of different varieties now. And this is one of them. But a lot of the ficus trees also have leaves which are uniformly green. So they're a popular houseplant, and they come in small shrub sizes up like this, up to trees which can get 6 feet or taller.
Are they hard to grow?
No, actually they're really easy to grow. You would put them in your house in a relatively sunny location, but not bright, direct sunlight. They require moderate watering levels and pruning. Pruning is the most important. One of the biggest problems with ficus trees is that they tend to drop their leaves. And as you can see in the pot here, that there are a few fallen leaves in here. Anytime a ficus gets slightly stressed out, its leaves will fall. And so it becomes kind of a cleaning situation where you have to constantly clean up after ficus trees. And one way to prevent that from happening is to make sure you're not overwatering, underwatering, and that you're pruning it in such a way that you let the light levels get into the inner portion of the plant, so that those leaves, because they're deprived of light, won't necessarily drop right away.
I think a neat thing about the ficus is that it actually can take things like benzene or formaldehyde out of the air, so it's actually cleaning the air while adding oxygen and sort of beauty to your house.
And that's true for all houseplants, actually. I mean, they're generally better for air quality because they do absorb all of those extraneous gases that are in the air.
We've got these pruning clippers here. I mean, can you just show us what is the right way to prune the tree?
Sure. Well, what you want to do is you want to prune in an area that is not too close to the leaf node here, but that'll give you plenty of room so that you can make the bush shrubby in the center and full, so that it's not getting too leggy. You've got several branches here that are growing out, and you really don't want that kind of leggy shape to the tree itself. So yeah, you'll want to sort of prune it in a regular, uniform way to create a nice shrubby bush.
Now, is that Norfolk pine I see down there, Cynthia?
Yeah, this is another common houseplant that a lot of people have. Norfolk pines require high light levels. So you want to plant them near a south or a southwest window or southeast window. And you'll also want to make sure that you don't want to let these plants dry out. Even though many houseplants in the wintertime you'll want to water them less, these plants, as well as a few others we'll talk about, do require a fairly regular watering schedule.
Now wait a minute, I've never heard that you have to water plants less in the wintertime?
Yes, and there's a reason for that. Many plants go into dormancy, and so you don't want them to continue to grow in a season where they're not used to growing. So many of these plants, you do want to cut your watering down a little bit. But some, like the Norfolk pine, you do not.
Keep watering.
Yes, right, like that and the spider plant. But another important item to take into account is humidity levels. Many of the plants here do not like low humidity, and of course in the wintertime with all of our heaters going on, the humidity in our house is around 10%, which is very low. So what you can do is mist these plants just with regular water, regular tepid water. I wouldn't use hot water or cold water, and that's the same for all of these. You really want to make sure your water temperature is lukewarm to tepid.
How often do you fertilize these plants?
Well, new plants, when I bring them home from a greenhouse or a nursery, I don't fertilize them for the first 6 months. And then after that, I'll fertilize them once or twice a year, depending on the plants. With a general fertilizer, all the greenhouse centers carry just general 20-20-20 nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and that's a good fertilizer to use for almost all of these plants here.
Now, if you don't have a lot of room in your house or your apartment for these bigger plants, what about some of these smaller ones? Like the spider plant I know is very popular.
It's one of my favorites here.
Yeah, the hanging baskets are really popular. There are lots of different varieties. Spider plant's a real popular one. And it's also a nice one because you can propagate this one indoors. All of these guys that hang off here are little plantlets that you can just prune off. And if you just prune it off, just like that, you'll see the roots that are sticking out here. All you can do is just stick this right in a pot. And as we saw in the last segment, you just have a plastic pot here with some good soil growing medium that you buy, and then you stick it in. You don't want the soil level too high. You want to keep it about 1/4 of an inch to an inch below the pot, and then just stick it in a little bit, put the soil around, and give it a good watering.
And that's all you have to do?
That's all you have to do. These are extremely easy to grow, but again, you have to keep the watering schedule fairly routine. You need to keep these fairly moist. Again, these also like bright indirect sunlight, so near a south window would be really good.
Now this aloe plant I think is great because it's a succulent, so it doesn't need a lot of water, but it also has a very nice exude, mucilaginous exude that you can use on cuts or burns or skin irritations.
That's the juice inside the plant,
That's the juice inside the plant.
Right. Aloe has been used as a medicinal plant for hundreds of years, and a lot of people have succulents in their home, and this is one example of a succulent. Now, for growing succulents in a home, of course, everybody knows that cacti and other things like this, aloes, need bright, bright light, bright, direct sunlight. That's absolutely necessary, and they need long, long periods of sunlight. So sometimes in our gray days of winter, you might see these plants getting brown tips on the edges, and that's a sure sign that it's not getting enough light, or it's a sign that it might be getting not enough water too.
So can you help it out by just putting it under a regular lamp indoors, or do you have to go and buy a special grow light?
The grow lights really do work very nicely. Having plants under lights, it's interesting because the light levels from the light to the plant decrease so dramatically the further away the plant is. Regular lights don't normally work. That's why you would want the grow lights. But aloes are nice because you don't have to water them very often. But for succulents, you have to make sure that you have good soil drainage. That doesn't mean sand. Sand is pretty much the killer for succulents. That's basically what you want is a mixture of perlite or some other soilless mix, a little bit of rich compost soil, and then a sand. So you sort of want 1/3 of each, maybe a little bit more sand than soil or perlite.
Do you always want the little drainage holes in the container too then, and put it on a plate or something?
Yeah, you don't. If you've got your succulents on a plate, what you don't want to do is to make sure it's sitting in water. If it's sitting in water, that's instant death for your succulents.
Okay, and I know we've got some African violets here. These are ones that a lot of people love to have around, and I have not had very good luck with them. What can I do?
I know a lot of people, they tend to water them with a cold water, and when you do that, you'll get a mottling of the leaves or splotchiness. It's really, really important to use a warm or tepid watering these, and that way you'll keep the leaves nice and green.
Some plants are very finicky, and African violets are one of the finickiest ones.
Oh, great.
they flower all the time, which makes them a really popular choice in your house. They do require bright, indirect sunlight, and as Jeremy said, you have to make sure that when you're watering this plant that you not only use lukewarm water, but you try not to get any water on the leaves. Otherwise, you're not going to have a very pretty plant.
Is it a good idea then to put it in a bowl of water and it'll suck it up through the bottom?
Once in a while, yeah, it is a good idea to submerge the pot in a little bit of water to let it suck up some of the water. But don't make that your general watering practice.
Okay.
Maybe once a month or once every few months you'd want to submerge the plants in water, just like as you said. Now, all of these plants do get pests once in a while, and one of the pests that they get is spider mites and mealybugs and scale. And for these guys, what you'd want to do if you've got those pests on these leaves, you take a dry cotton piece of swab and you just swab that off with a little bit of alcohol on it, and that will be sure to kill the bug.
Is that, can you tell you're getting it when it gets kind of a webby growth
yeah,
on the
for
leaves?
spider mites,
I've seen that.
you'll have a severe infestation if you see the webs.
It's too late.
You've got a bad plant. At that point, what you'll need to do is take, not for African violets, but for another plant like we'll get to, you'll take a warm cloth and you'll wash it off.
Okay.
You wash it off.
And I've found also like a 50-50 mixture of like Murphy's oil soap and water is also a good spray for some of the soft-bodied plant pests.
Yeah, insecticidal soaps are good. They're good organic and they're non-toxic and they're not a chemical, like organophosphates or pyrethrins, like Raid and things like that. You don't really want to spray those on your plants, or orthene or something like that.
And how often should you be checking, or what do you look for to nip a problem like that in the bud?
You should check it every time you water the plants. If you're watering them once or twice a week, just do a quick check for any bugs that you see. Look under the leaves, look in the flowers, look all around and see if you can see any pests that are beginning to infiltrate your plant.
Okay, well, I hope you've got some great indoor houseplant tips during this segment, and we want to say thanks to Cynthia Mazur for joining us.
Thank you.
And hope you got some good tips. We'll be back with more later.
It's interesting that people sometimes when they think gardening, Maureen, are thinking outside, but inside gardening and the tips you need to keep the plants growing indoors are just as important.
They sure are. And I find a great place to grow plants indoors sometimes can be your office.
Yes, well, you've got a spider plant.
I have this huge, wonderful spider plant. I saw the one over here on the set, and it's great to have a spider plant in your office, especially if you have a place where all of those babies can hang down all the way to the floor. I have an east window, which works really great for my plants in the office. And I've always had a really terribly brown thumb. I would bring something home, and my husband would first of all say to me, "Oh, that looks like something you could kill."
Have you succeeded?
In killing them? Yes. Sometimes. But in the office, I've actually had a lot of luck. With this east window, it works just great.
Right.
And I'm even graduating to an African violet now, which we were also showing.
Yes.
And I've even managed to keep my African violet alive for about 4 or 5 months now.
Yes.
So I'm really pleased.
When the flowers come out, then you'll know you've made it. Get to your telephone right now. We're going to be going back in just a few moments to the next segment of the Gardener's Guide to Northeastern Ohio. You'll learn more about gardening right here in our area. You're not going to have to worry about what you hear. Does it work here? Because yes, everything that you see on today's show will work here. But we want to remind you of this fabulous new thank you gift we have. It's actually called the Gardener's Guide for Northeastern Ohio. It was put together with WVIZ PBS in cooperation with Cleveland Botanical Gardens. And I think you heard us tell you before that over 20 years, for their members only, Maureen, you couldn't just pick these up in the Botanical Garden, but for their members only, they put out a newsletter. And it was loaded with questions and answers. And this book is just filled with them, and you can have it at the $60 level. Some of the questions in here are things like, can I cut back my lilies now that they're done blooming? Can I prune my rose of Sharon now? Can I save impatiens over the winter? I potted mine, but they don't look very good. How about how do I maintain my flower beds? How do I stake my flowers? All of these are just on one page, Maureen, of this book, which will come your way if you'd go to your telephone right now and say, thank you, WVIZ PBS, with your $60 pledge of support to the station. We hope you'll consider charging that pledge on your MasterCard, your Visa, your Discover card, or your check debit card. But for goodness sakes, get to the phone now. You're not going